Hello and welcome. My name is Rick Lee, and this is Cinema Church. It's a new idea that I had recently. It's been stirring around for a few weeks now. Basically, I'm going to be looking at some popular films and trying to draw elements of the gospel from those films. As a better way of sort of looking at and understanding the gospel in practical terms. The first movie that I'd like to start with is might be a controversial choice. It is Bad Santa. So Bad Santa is a kind of a raunchy, dark comedy Christmas movie. It's a pretty rough movie to watch, especially I don't know, with family members and church members and just in general, really. Generally speaking, it's not a movie that I would openly recommend to people coming from a biblical perspective. Just because on the surface there's a lot there. And in particular, there's a few scenes that really push the limit of even an R rating. But what I find interesting about this movie is that in spite of all that, there's still this really strange, deep parallel to the gospel hidden within this insanely bad movie. Now, I saw this movie for the first time when I was like 13. I think it was coming on Comedy Central's Secret Stash or something like that. And of course, I'm a 13-year-old kid. I'm like, what is this, you know? And I'm trying to watch it. And then later, years later, I got saved when I was about 22 years old or so. But later, I remembered seeing it and was like, oh, that was a kind of a funny movie. It was like on, I think it was on like TNT or something like that. I was like, all right, let's check this out. So I watched it again, and I was surprised by how much in the movie wasn't just sort of like a slapstick comedy or just like cheap, F-bomb jokes and stuff like that. Because there's actually a certain degree of depth in the movie, just from a secular perspective. The movie opens with there are some loud vehicles that go by my place. I'm not sure why. What was I saying? Okay, yeah, so there's some depth to the movie. The movie opens with a score from Frédéric Chopin's Nocturne, playing with a snowy, dark background. And this movie just opens like that, and it's just sort of this lament happening. And then the uncut version or what have you, you've got Willie, the main character, played by Billy Bob Thornton. He's just sitting, just gnarled in this bar by himself on Christmas Eve. And you hear an inner monologue of his thoughts as he's reflecting on his life and basically saying like, oh, I hate there's all these different things. I can't do the voice without laughing. But he's basically just miserable. This miserable character who's drinking himself to death, and you kind of get a picture of why. He's saying that he's playing this Santa character every year. He doesn't want to do it. You don't know exactly why yet, but he reveals at the end of this monologue that that his father didn't ever do anything for him except for teach him how to crack a safe. And then that's kind of the end of the monologue and the opening segue into showing exactly what Willie does. And what he does, it shows in the next scene, him and his partner, who is Marcus, who is a little person who's playing the part of an elf, and they come as a team. He's Santa Claus and the little person is the elf, and they play the part of this mall Santa character. And then on Christmas Eve every year, after the mall closes, they break in and they steal all the money in the safe that's been saved up from all the Christmas shopping. So they're this tag team sort of what's the word? Not criminals. I don't even know what the word, con artists, I guess, is the best way to put it. So that's your complete introduction to Willie. He's this character, he's got a drinking problem, he's a thief, he hates himself, he hates his life, he's just gotten into this nasty sort of situation. Well, they go away, they go their separate way for the year, spend all their money, and then come back the next year. It's Christmas again, so it's time for them to get to work. They end up in somewhere in like Texas or something like that, and it's just hot outside. And they're setting up shop again. You've seen what they do, now it's just playing through it. And you're getting development in this new town. You've got this mall manager who's a little crazy. He's played by John Ritter, I think John Ritter from Three's Company. He does a really good job in this flick. I think it was actually his last film. Also, Bernie Mac is amazing in this movie. He is a character for sure. You can tell he's really having fun with the part.
What can I say?
So you got these two characters who are prowling around, sort of interfering with things. But then you've also got this kid that gets introduced somewhere probably at about the 1/3 mark of the movie. And this is where things really start to take a turn. Because you have an interaction with main character Willie and this kid whose name is Thurman Merman, or something along those lines. So this kid is a little strange. He comes off of this bus one day. His kids are throwing stuff at him. He's just completely ignoring them, just keeps walking by them, walks all the way, stands in line to see Santa Claus, and it is an older kid. He's by himself. He doesn't have any parents with him. Later we see the kid, after this first introduction with Willie, the kid's kind of freaked out because Willie's a crazy person, and he knows that he's not Santa Claus, or does he? I don't know. But the kid's kind of like, hey, strange. He's standing in the parking lot after this. He's keeping an eye on Willie. Willie goes to a bar after this, and then there are some awful scenes that happen shortly after that. But the kid comes up late at night after Willie's being attacked by someone in the parking lot. And the kid tells him, oh, stay away from Santa Claus. He tries to help him. And the guy just kind of leaves. And so Willie's like, he kind of thanks him sort of offhandedly and offers to give him a ride home, which he does. And when he gets there, he tries to break in and rob the kid's house, only to find that the only one there is his grandmother, and his parents, his mom's dead, and his dad is in prison. So his grandmother's really kind of not all there, and he walks in with a ski mask, and his grandmother walks up and asks him if he needs any sandwiches, and then he just takes the ski mask off. It's like, this is, it. And so a few more plot points happen. Willie ends up moving into the kid's house because his hotel room gets raided, and this kid starts, there's this back and forth that keeps going on with Willie. This kid is super naive, super innocent about everything, and Willie is just this crazy person who just steals and cheats people, and he can't believe every turn, like, this kid is as green and naive as he is. It just keeps surprising Willie again and again, and it seems to have an effect on him over time as we see the movie progress. We see Willie sort of start to empathize with this child, which we hadn't seen up until this point him do with anyone. And we see him try to take up for him with the kids, the bullies, and what have you, and sort of just be touched by this kid. So essentially, this child changes Willie, but he doesn't do it through any sort of aggressive force. He does it rather in a way that is surprisingly reflective of some of the ideas and themes of the gospel. I guess that's kind of where I'm headed with this. Now, more specifically, what's noteworthy about this film is the amount of seemingly blatant symbolism that's attached to it. The first notable moment, I would say, is when at some point, Willie's hanging out with this kid. They're playing checkers, and the kid will move a piece, and he'll look at Willie and then move it back. And he'll get frustrated. He'll move a piece and look at Willie and move it back. And finally, Willie snaps the kid. Well, just pick a move and go for it. The kid like triple jumps him and gets to the king space and says, "King me." And Willie freaks out and just throws the board and just like crazy. And it's a funny moment, but when you look at it, it's a really good symbolism for their entire dynamic, because this kid seems like, forgive me for saying it, but an idiot. He seems just completely oblivious. He seems stupid. And he seems that way to Willie, too. And yet, at every turn, he seems to have the upper hand on Willie in the strangest way. Willie's stronger. He's seemingly more clever. And yet, this kid is always on top of things. He's always ahead of him.
Want to play again?
So, and then the... I didn't think about it until actually just now talking about it, but the idea of King Me is kind of interesting too, but I'm not going to talk about that yet. Another part is one day Willie wakes up, he's just like drank a lot and he's hungover and he's getting up and he hears this screaming upstairs, loud, ear-piercing scream. He runs up, this kid's just got blood all over him coming down his arm. He's like, "What happened?" You know, and then the kid's like, "I cut myself by mistake." And he's like, "Oh, of course it was by mistake." And he runs him over to the sink and starts pouring water on it, trying to help the kid fix his hand. And finally pours some vodka on it. The kid screams even louder. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry," you know. And it's just kind of like a throwaway part of the movie, but we see like this moment and we remember it. Well, later in the film, on Christmas night, a major turning point in the film, the kid hands Willie this brown, round piece of wood. He says, "Hey, Merry Christmas." I said, "Thanks, kid. What is it? What is this?" And the kid says, "It's a wooden pickle." And he's like, "Well, why does it paint? Why'd you paint it brown?" And he says, "It's not. I didn't. It's my blood when I cut myself making it for you." So that's interesting. First, you've got the king me. Then you've got the gift covered in blood. Then Willie goes to do his final run. He gets backstabbed by Marcus. I hate to spoil the movie for you. If you want, you can stop right here. I didn't call spoiler alerts, but it's definitely getting spoiled from this point on. Marcus turns on him, tries to hold him up and shoot him, and but Willie is insistent that he's going to get this kid a Christmas present, because the kid tells him that he's never gotten a Christmas present in like 4 or 5 years from anybody. He keeps asking Santa, sending letters and stuff. Nobody's getting him Christmas presents. This poor kid lives by himself with his grandma, who's not all there. So Willie's like, "No, I'm getting this kid a present." So he gets him this pink elephant, because I guess that's what he asked for. And Marcus holds him up. And just after having sort of a back and forth with Marcus, the police show up and say, "Freeze!" And Willie takes a run for it. And so Willie runs. Marcus, I guess, gets caught. And Willie gets in his car. He's like, "It's Christmas Eve. This kid's getting his present." And he's driving down the road trying to get back to the house. He gets there. He jumps out of the car. He runs to the door trying to give this kid his elephant, and the police open fire on him as he's running to the door. He gets shot and collapses in front of the door with the elephant, just lands right on the doormat, and it's got blood on it. And so so this kid gives him a gift covered in his blood, and so Willie in turn, he does the same. He gives a gift back covered in his blood. So he has, in a sense, imitated the gift that the kid has given him. Final scene, one more interesting, significant piece. Final scene of the movie, the last shot, and last shots are usually significant, just like first shots are. Last shot is of the kid. Willie's okay. He actually, they threw his case out because it turns out that he was the one who wrote the letter that notified the police what was going on. He goes to a hospital. He's going to become this counselor. to prevent like police brutality, something along those lines. So he gets the best possible situation. He gets pretty much his slate cleaned. He gets a new job, a new life, and he writes a letter to this kid telling him about it. Kid reads the letter and goes outside, and the last shot of the movie is from above, by the way. I just want to note that. Just want to throw that out there. From above, looking down on the kid, and he's wiping the blood off of the stone slab that's in front of his door. Just want to washed it clean. He washed it clean. I just want to put that out there. So there's just a few things in there that just scream out to me as symbolism. They just feels too perfect, a little too perfect. And the funny thing is that this movie is awful. Like, as far as like profanity goes, it's got all kinds of sexual content, themes, all sorts of things that a lot of people don't want to be sitting and watching because it's super raunchy. And yet, this movie is packed to the brim with this theming, these ideas, and it's hard to pack it all together, but I'm gonna try anyways, because I feel like it wouldn't. Yeah, I need to. Alright, so I'm gonna try my best at interpreting this. But before I do, I want to point to an interpretation I read some time ago about the Lord of the Rings. It's a great interpretation, or at least I thought so, that there are 3 characters in the Lord of the Rings that symbolize Christ in different ways. Now, the first 2 I think are pretty obvious. Probably Aragorn is the most obvious. You've got this king coming into his rite of birth, what have you. That one's pretty clear. Gandalf the Grey. He is this powerful being that shows up right at the nick of time when they need him. He comes and goes, but he's always sort of with them. He's always has their back. He is definitely feels like a symbol for the Father, especially in The Hobbit. I felt like The Hobbit, he really was an embodiment. And The Lord of the Rings too. He's a guide. He's bringing them. He's leading them. You shall not pass. I love that scene. The third one's a little bit trickier. The third one is Samwise Gamgee. Samwise Gamgee. So this one's an interesting one, but if you think about it, it makes sense. Samwise follows Frodo literally to Mount Doom. When Frodo can no longer walk up the mountain, he carries him on his back. Oh man, I'm getting emotional. Alright, where was I? So, that interpretation of Samwise Gamgee I think is interesting because he's sort of this unexpected character who can fill that role, who has these alignments with Christ. And the reason I say that, and the reason why I tell you all that, is to sort of prepare you for the interpretation that I have of Bad Santa. And there is a character in this movie. There's only one character who could possibly fit the role, and you've probably already figured it out. That lines up with the ways and spirit of Christ, and that is Thurman Merman. I know it's it's a hard sell, but hear me out. So this character, first of all, our introduction to him is of a group of kids who are throwing things at him, and he's literally turning the other cheek. He's walking away from them. He's not fighting them. He's accepting their harm on him and continuing on. That's our introduction to this character. Second, we have a character who trusts all things, basically. He's always patient, always kind. He's never boastful. and Willie just takes him as being this naive idiot, and yet we see that he's somewhat clever, and he always seems to get the upper hand on Willie. We have that scene with him playing checkers, and Willie yells at him, and then he double jumps him and says, "King me, king me." And then finally we have his blood on a piece of wood. To be hung on a tree is to become a curse. That's a saying, a biblical saying, representing what Christ becoming a curse for us. And to be hung on a tree, to be on wood, your blood on wood. That is, he literally gives him a wooden pickle. I don't know why they wouldn't pickle. I think they're just trying to make it funny. But a piece of wood covered in his blood. They got as close. They got literally as close as they could possibly go, without it being too obvious, I feel. And then Willie, after this point in the movie, and we see Billy Bob Thornton does an excellent job at acting, especially in this scene. You see he's shaken by this moment. You see an immediate change in his character. After this moment, he goes. He still does the job, but he's not the same person. You can see it in his eyes, and when Marcus confronts him to kill him, he doesn't just call Marcus a jerk or whatever and just like run out like you would expect. He confronts Marcus about what they had been doing, about do you people need all this? It's Christmas time, and then in the spirit of selflessness, he risks his life to give a gift to this kid. So he's changed by this child's gift, and he mimics it. And so we as Christians are called to become imitators of Christ. And our call to this comes from being changed by a gift, the gift that is given to us, to be humbled by it to the point where we're willing to give it to other people. And this is exactly what we see in the film. One final note that I think is interesting is that the kid, the back of the kid's shirt, you see it from above as he's wiping it. It says, "Stuff happens when you party naked." Now this is, just at the glance of it, it just seems like a crappy throwaway line. That's just garbage. That why would they put that in there? Who cares? But the theme of it, if you really break it apart, it really encapsulates something in the film. So this idea of being naked can translate to the idea of vulnerability. So things happen, and he doesn't say stuff. It says S-H-I-T. I'm not going to curse on this video if I can help it. It says, so it says, it's basically saying that things happen when you're vulnerable, which is a pretty dead-on statement about the interaction between Willie and this kid, and how Willie was changed by becoming this kid essentially was as vulnerable as a person could possibly be with Willie. And Willie was essentially as terrible a person towards this kid as a person could possibly be. Just completely a wolf on a sheep. As much a picture of that as possible. And yet, the sheep was not consumed, the wolf was changed. And that is a powerful image. But I found the shirt interesting too, as a final statement from the movie, towards the power of vulnerability and leading from weakness. That's an important biblical theme that I think is not an easy thing to practice, but I think is an important thing to practice, especially in witnessing to people. So, in conclusion, I want to say one more time, this movie, I'm not necessarily recommending it to anyone. There is probably more profanity in this movie than any other Christmas movie ever made. I feel safe in saying that. I think I looked it up at one point. It was like 144 F-bombs. It's thick with it. there's no messing around. And there are some scenes that are really bad. So I leave it to the viewers to decide for yourself whether or not you want to check it out. But I hope at the very least maybe this review has offered sort of a bridge towards some of the ideas and the story that's presented. And if you feel good about checking it out further, then go ahead. But I did give you a disclaimer. I just want to note that. Yeah, so thanks for watching. I'm planning on posting more of these. I'm still figuring out the format and exactly how I'm doing these. So you'll probably see this evolve a little bit over time. This is my first video, so I'm just kind of seeing how it goes. But if you enjoyed this, please let me know. Give me a like or a comment or something. It's a huge encouragement to me, and any feedback I can get at this point to try and get this thing going will be super helpful as well. So I appreciate that, and thank you for watching. You guys have a great day.